A few weeks ago I noticed some issues with my corals and certain macroalgae. The soft corals were doing great and even the acants were looking healthy, but I couldn't say the same for my Turbinaria and Lobophilia. Something was off. The tissue on these delicate corals started to retreat, exposing the skeleton beneath. But I wasn't sure what was causing it. Corals are sensitive animals, and there are many possibilities for what could be causing this. I didn't see any pests, I didn't see any fish nipping on the tissue of the coral, and I didn't make any changes to the placement of the coral, lighting or flow strength. I had to test the water to see if that was something that was upsetting them. I did, and my findings weren't great. Some levels were too high, others were too low. This could have been a major factor to these issues I was facing with some of my coral, but it definitely wasn't the only issue. When it comes to the Lobophilia, you can clearly tell it looks starved compared to the other Lobophilia right above it. Compared to this one, the one higher up on the rock looks nice and fat. I have my suspicions as to why this is happening. As part of my cleanup crew, I have this sand sifting Goby. One thing I did notice is that it kept spewing sand right next and sometimes even on top of the coral. But every time the coral did manage to clear off the sand off its tissue, but that did keep him from eating properly. Slowly starving to death while spending its remaining energy on clearing off the sand. Anyways, the first issue was an easy fix. I performed a small water change every few days and it slowly fixed the water quality issues. The goal was not to stress the animals in the tank too much by doing a massive water change at once. The best way to get things back on track is to do things slow and steady. And today the parameters are back on track. That's a big relief, but something we need to keep an eye on. I think I'll move the starving Lobophilia to another part of the reef later in this video when we add tons of other cool corals. But now I'd like to show you something very unique. What you're about to see is a partnership like no other. A partnership so unique that it thrives on teamwork and trust. A relationship between two unlikely creatures, the Wheeler's Goby and the pistol shrimp. Meet the Wheeler's Goby, a clever little fish that spends most of its time keeping an eye out for danger. But even the fastest fish can't avoid every predator lurking in the shadows. But that's where the pistol shrimp comes in. A tiny creature with enormous power. The pistol shrimp has one weapon that outshines the rest, its claw. With a claw that can snap shut so fast, it creates a bubble that stuns prey and predators. Like this snail, it got knocked right over. But it doesn't use this power alone. It has a companion, the Goby. Together they share the same home, a burrow. The Goby takes up a position at the entrance while carefully scanning the horizon. If a predator gets too close, it either darts inside the burrow with lightning speed or scares away the predator, always keeping watch over its shrimp friend. When danger strikes, the shrimp's sharp claw can make all the difference. But the shrimp can't really see as well as the Goby, and that's where their symbiotic bond truly shines. The Goby warns the shrimp of any approaching danger, and in return, the shrimp creates a safe haven, a burrow that's too deep for most predators to reach. In a world where survival is often about strength and size, this pair teaches us something profound. It's not always the biggest or the fastest that thrives. Sometimes it's the ones who know how to work together, who find their strengths in each other. And so the Wheeler's Goby and pistol shrimp continue their delicate dance of survival. The Goby keeps watch and the shrimp builds. Two creatures, different in form but united in purpose, proving that in this world, teamwork is everything. And this is exactly the vision I had for this giant saltwater paludarium, and I'm so happy to see it's taking shape. Tons of small creatures with each their own story, all forming a healthy and thriving ecosystem. It doesn't matter when or where you look, there is always something going on. A lot of people were skeptical when I built this saltwater aquarium and put plants this close to the salt water. And I'll confess, I was skeptical as well. I never managed to keep plants alive for longer than a few weeks, so this was a big challenge. But I'm surprised with how well things are going. Plants are growing and things are maturing very well. One thing I'm very proud of is my orchid. Orchids are some of the most beautiful plants, and I always thought they were incredibly difficult to keep alive. Turns out, they're not. Look at this, it's blooming again. Some people recommended I cut off the old stems when they finished blooming a few months ago, so the plant could direct its nutrients to new growth. This was the best decision I ever made, because look at all these new flowers. It's so exciting to see this plant bloom again. I water my plants with RODI water every few days, and once a month I even add a few drops of aquarium plant fertilizer to that water. But other than that, that's all I'm really doing for these plants. It's so simple. The mangroves are the only plants that are in contact with salt water, and I'd say that even those are doing very well. But there are a few things I'd like to keep an eye on. With the lights on, you don't really notice much. But when I turn off the lights, you can clearly tell this one, for example, turned yellow. There are some other mangroves that are having the same issues. But they all have something in common, which is kind of a relief. Only the mangroves I bought with leaves face these issues. The propagules I bought without any leaves don't have these issues. All of the mangroves have new growth, and it seems that only the old leaves are turning yellow. So I'm not too worried about this. What do you think? Another factor that could influence this rapid change of the plants dropping their old leaves are the messed up water parameters we talked about earlier. Salinity was a little bit too high, and while these mangroves tolerate salt well, swings or elevated levels can stress these plants out. They are true divas. So I think this is a survival instinct where they drop their old leaves to support the new growth. Alrighty, let's add some new corals to these rocks. This time I decided to go for some smaller pieces, but before we add them to the system, let's make sure they don't contain any unwanted pests by dipping them in this coral dip. Big shout out to the channel sponsor Fritz Aquatics. I think it's going to turn out really well if we focus on small corals and not so much on big pieces. Tons of smaller corals make the tank look much larger in perspective compared to only having a handful of big pieces. That's why I decided to go for a few different varieties of zoanthids, mushroom corals, small Euophilia coral frags, and this big gorgonian, and you'll see why and understand why later in this video. After spending about 15 minutes in the coral dip, I inspect them one final time and clean them off in a separate container with salt water I took out of the aquarium. While this product is great, you don't want coral dip inside the tank itself, as that could hurt the ecosystem, killing off the good critters as well. I really struggle with coral placement. It's not just difficult to make things visually appealing, but each type of coral also has different requirements when it comes to flow and lighting. However, mushroom corals and zoanthids are some of the most forgiving corals you can have in your aquarium. They are soft corals. Soft corals are a type of coral that lacks a skeleton beneath its tissue. The only thing they really need are nutrients. Nutrients like nitrates and phosphates. These two elements are the result of waste in the aquarium. So you could say that these corals do great in a dirty aquarium. Just like the mangroves and macroalgae, they all need nutrients. Not too much, but definitely not too little. Mushroom corals and zoanthids come in a ton of different colors, which makes them even more fun. There's something else we need to take into consideration, because not all corals can be placed close to each other, but with these corals, that's not a problem at all. In fact, you can create some really nice colorful gardens with them. The Euophilias require a bit more attention, as they do have a skeleton to support. You'll need to keep an eye on your calcium and magnesium levels, but other than that, they are pretty easy as well. This big piece may look a bit odd, but trust me, it's such a nice addition to this aquarium. This is called a gorgonian. It is a type of filter feeding coral. This yellow one here is also a gorgonian and it's doing really well. These corals have tons of small polyps that they use to filter small particles from the water as a way of consuming food. Since this aquarium doesn't have any mechanical filtration, there are a lot of small particles floating around in the water column. They're not as visual to our eyes, but trust me, they are a must for these corals. Their cool structure and shape makes them a very cool addition to the system. What do you think of these additions? If you are a regular viewer of these videos, you may have noticed something else by now. If not, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss out on any future updates. Some time ago, when I was dealing with a saltwater parasite called Marinic, I added 2 cleaner reses to help eat these parasites off the fish. But as these fish are constantly trying to clean the other fish in the tank, this can become stressful for the others. I had 2, meaning 2 fish that were constantly trying to nip the other fish. I started noticing some stress-related behavior where these fish were being chased around the aquarium by these cleaner reses non-stop. As some people mentioned earlier as well, this was something to keep an eye on. I decided it was a good idea to relocate them. We no longer have issues with these saltwater parasite. But have you ever tried catching a supersonic fish in a massive aquarium with lots of obstacles? Yeah, this was a massive challenge. Catching these fish with a net is no option. I decided to turn off the lights and wait a few hours because most fish go into hiding to rest during the night. And this turned out to be a great idea because I found one of the cleaner reses inside the barnacles I added when I set up this aquarium. It's the perfect hideout for them. But not in this case. I easily picked up the barnacles and slowly poured the fish into a bucket. I only caught one and I brought it together with the 3 sea urchins I had in this tank to the local fish store. The sea urchins developed a taste for my macroalgae, so they also had to go. Now that I have only 1 cleaner res, I no longer see any issues. The fish aren't constantly getting chased around anymore. Over the next few weeks, I want to work on automating my tank more. Don't get me wrong, it's not a lot of work to maintain this system as some people think. But to keep things more stable, I would like to install an auto top-off system. This system will ensure that the salt levels in the aquarium remain stable, as it will automatically fill the tank back up with RODI water when water inside the aquarium evaporates. Remember, water evaporates, but salt doesn't. As water evaporates, salt levels go up. RODI water is water stripped of its minerals, metals and pollutants and doesn't contain any salt. This is what's used to top off for evaporation in a reef tank. Another thing I'd like to add is an automatic misting system. This will help keep the moss nice and moist. The heat of the lights and the open room really makes the water evaporate so much faster and the moss dries out after 1 or 2 days without misting. A misting system will ensure they are constantly being kept moist and will take a lot of work off my back. Most of the time spent maintaining this system goes into misting these plants. Unfortunately, my filefish isn't eating any of the Aptasia anemones we found on the rocks. And to be honest, I haven't seen it in a few days. This is common. It's constantly hiding behind the rocks or in between the macroalgae here on the right. I keep seeing more and more of these tiny pest anemones, so I think it's time to look for alternatives. There are plenty of natural alternatives, so no need to worry. We don't want this to get out of control, as these anemones can also irritate corals as they get close to it. Just look at how amazing these new corals look. They were a great choice and I can't wait to add more to this reef tank. What do you suggest we add next? Let me know in the comments down below and thanks for watching.